What's up, everybody? As you can see, my timing's a little off this morning. I still waking up, still having my coffee. Happy Friday morning to you guys. I hope you've had a wonderful week, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead that you're looking forward to. Wanted to hit on something real quick this morning because one of the first things I do when I wake up is, pull up my email, pull up my Twitter, and just see what people are talking about. So last night, a few boxers competed over in MMA, and most notably a couple of high-level female boxers, pound-for-pound level female boxers. Amanda Serrano and Claressa Shields competed over in MMA. And I saw a couple of tweets out there from the usual suspects in boxing media yesterday and today, both before the fight and subsequent to the fight, just posting stuff that I wanted to address in a quick rant, okay? And first of all, let me say, I mean, the minute Claressa announced that she wanted to get into MMA, those of you who watch my show, listen to my podcasts and everything, you heard me say I wish her well over in MMA. I really, really do, because it's not her fault that she doesn't have a high level of competition in boxing. In women's boxing, the talent pool north of 147 pounds there is none. There's just zero talent. Okay, there's a couple of Claressa obviously is a top talent. There's a couple of other girls who are pretty good, but for the most part, the talent pool is very, very shallow. You go south of 147, really 135 and south is the class of women's boxing. That's where the real talent is. There's still good fighters at 40, 47, but you go north of that, the talent pool is very, very weak. So it's not Claressa's fault that the talent pool is weak where she's competed in women's boxing. She can only fight who they put in front of her. So I recognize and understand why she's gone over into MMA, but I've also spoke truth about it. And I think that some of the tweets I've seen, and to summarize some of them, I'm completely paraphrasing here, guys, and I'm not going to name names, and this isn't targeted at any specific person in the boxing media, so don't even start trying to start some beef or whatever with this. But I've seen tweets saying, props to Claressa for being the only boxer who's willing to go over into MMA, or the only women's boxer who's willing to go over into MMA. No female has ever done this before. She's daring to be great. I see other tweets saying there's not enough support for what Claressa Shields is doing. This is disgusting. And people are throwing out labels like sexist and racist and all these sorts of things that you see on Twitter every nanosecond. You see that kind of stuff posted. And my issue with those tweets, okay, is that they're extremely tunnel visioned and just narrow-minded and limited in the scope of the whole picture of Claressa, right? There's a lot to talk about there. And it's okay. In fact, it should be encouraged to talk about the entire thing, to talk about the entire story. And it's the same with every fighter. Okay. And it's okay to recognize that there's a track record of issues there that have led to her going over into MMA. And that's part of it. This isn't her necessarily daring to be great. If she was daring to be great, she'd go over into UFC, which is the premier promotion over in MMA. They dominate MMA. It's not like MMA is similar to boxing, where boxing, you have several power brokers, global power brokers in this sport. You have basically 5 or 6 UFCs, right? You have Matchroom, you have PBC/Al Heyman, you have Top Rank, and on and on and on it goes. So you have multiple UFCs. Over at MMA, it's UFC. They are 90% of MMA, and then it's a bunch of tiny little promotions that are kind of on the outside looking in, right? The best fighters in MMA fight in UFC. It's been that way for a while. UFC has gobbled up all the rival promotions. We know this. Even a casual observer like myself, who is not really an MMA guy, it's just not my thing, I can recognize this. And you recognize the structure and how all of it's built and everything else. So Claressa, until she goes into the UFC and fights Amanda Nunes, she's not daring to be great, because Amanda Nunes is the baddest chick on the planet over on that side of the street, right? In fact, she's probably pound for pound the most successful MMA fighter regardless of gender right now. And that's also a big difference between MMA and boxing. The women in MMA crush it. In UFC, I should say, let's be specific. The women in UFC run it and have for a while. Some of the biggest stars, the biggest star in UFC history was Ronda Rousey, a female, right? And their biggest star right now might be Nunes. She may not be as commercially popular as a couple of the male fighters, but she is seen and respected just as much, if not more, as their top male fighters right now. So you see that over in UFC. That's not something you see in women's boxing, and it's just never been there. Okay. Particularly, as I said before, north of like 135 pounds. You just don't see that. The talent pool just isn't the same. So with Claressa, and again, I give her full credit. You guys, some of you out there need to hear this part first, okay? I need the preface because you're only going to focus on the criticism. You're not going to hear the compliments. I give Claressa full credit. She has beat everybody they've put in front of her in boxing. Two-time Olympic gold medalist. She's been the legitimate champion at 154, 160, and 168 in women's boxing. All she could do is fight who's available, right? And she's done that, and she's won, and she's been pretty dominant. She's not always the most exciting fighter. She doesn't get knockdowns or knockouts. But in terms of her boxing, she's been dominant. And now she just went over to MMA and won last night. I believe it was a come from behind victory. I didn't watch it, but I've read about it, where she was down on the cards, comes back to score a late stoppage. So credit to her, man. That's hard to do. And she does deserve tremendous credit, okay? But let's talk about reality too, because reality matters. And the issue with some of these tweets and some of the usual suspects out there in the fight media posting their stuff is because it's politically driven. They're playing the woke thing. And I don't want to drive some of you, because I know some of you are sensitive about the woke thing, but you guys need to hear it because it's the truth. It's what's going on right now in media, okay? And entertainment. And boxing is part of the entertainment space. It's really, the boxing community is not really that different from Hollywood right now, okay? It's a derivative of Hollywood and that entertainment scene. It really, truly is. Sports media is connected with the entertainment business now. And these guys are posting things to stay in the good graces of the elites that run the corporate media. So they're playing the woke thing. They're marching in the same political rallies together to stay in the good graces, to keep those corporate jobs. And what you'll notice about some of these people that are tweeting the stuff that they're tweeting is they have those network positions, right? They might be low-level network positions, but they work at these it might be a streaming platform, or it might be a traditional network. It might be here in the US or somewhere in another part of the world, but they're working with some sort of broadcast platform, and they want to keep that job. And the way you do that is riding that wave that is running social media right now through these companies, right? So that's what it's all about. It's not really about telling the truth. It's not about telling the whole story. It's not about treating somebody the same way you treat another person. It's about saying what's popular right now and what the agenda that's being driven is right now. That's why I take issue with some of the tweets. Where I come from and the way I grew up in the real world, the way you show respect to somebody, the way you show that you value them and see them as your equal as a human being, is by being every bit as critical to them and holding them to the exact same standard that you would hold yourself, that you would hold anybody else to. So when I'm critical of Claressa Shields, and I have been critical, that is me showing her respect. Some of you who grew up, some of you younger guys who grew up in a bubble, and you've only listened to your favorite artist or your favorite athlete or your college professor or whatever, and you haven't really lived in the real world, you're not used to this concept. So back up a little bit and just hear me out, okay? Me being critical of Claressa, me talking about her, like three-dimensionally, if you will, okay? The same way I would with a male boxer is me showing her respect. I don't want to treat her with kid gloves or hold her to a lower standard or curve the grading scale just because she's a female. Or, I don't do that with fighters of different ethnic backgrounds or whatever, promoters of different nationalities or whatever. I look at everybody and hold them to the same standard. That is the way I show respect, number one. But number two, that is the way that I show and prove that I see them as equals, as human beings to me. I don't treat them differently. To me, if you're treating somebody differently, if you're curving the grading scale, if you're lowering the bar for them, and not holding them to the same standard that you'd hold somebody else over here to, that's prejudice. That's bias. And that, unfortunately, dominates the mainstream media that we live in right now. And mainstream media, big tech, the big corporations, they're all into this narrative. And so a lot of you guys have grown up being taught to curve the grading scale, and you do this math equation in your head when you look at a person and you judge them based upon their appearance and how you interpret their appearance and what categories they fit into based upon your judgment of how they look. And then you judge them according to that math equation's output. I don't do that shit. I look at everybody and judge them the same way. And let's talk some truth about Claressa real quick. There's always been a personality issue over there. Okay. There's plenty of instances I can point to, but there have been family members, uncles who have sucker punched fighters in the ring after a fight. And she tweets out, "Good job, Unc." She's not condemning that behavior. She's complimenting it. There have been family members who have sucker punched an opponent's trainer at a weigh-in, an elderly man, put him in a hospital. That behavior wasn't largely condemned. There's video of Claressa bullying and harassing parents at an amateur event. I'm sure some of you have seen that. Her team has gone to great lengths to take that footage off the internet, but it has been passed around. There are multiple instances I could bring up, okay? She's a divisive personality, and she has said some things that were politically divisive that some people would ride with because they agree with that worldview, but the other 90% of the world either disagrees with completely or just tunes out because they don't want to hear it, right? So, and I should state, Claressa is not the only divisive or abrasive personality in boxing. Billy Joe Saunders is an asshole. Most people don't like Billy Joe Saunders. Tyson Fury has said some really controversial, divisive things. Manny Pacquiao has said things that really offended people. Deontay Wilder. Is there a more divisive, abrasive personality in all of boxing right now than Deontay Wilder? So I mentioned those guys to show that this is not limited to Claressa Shields or women boxers. The guys are much, much worse, okay? Boxing is full of quirky, crazy personalities. It is the least politically correct mainstream sport in the world. That's part of why I love it, because it's crazy, it's insane. You never know what you're going to hear or see. So people's personalities don't bother me. I don't lose sleep over it, but I will address it because a lot of times your personality is a big part of your marketing as a fighter. Another difference between UFC and boxing. Over in UFC is the brand. It's not the fighter. There are a few fighters in UFC that do transcend, but it's really about the UFC over there. That is the brand. It's kind of similar to basketball. The NBA is the brand. American gridiron football. The NFL is the brand. In boxing, the fighter is the brand. Nobody gives a shit if it's for a WBA title or a WBC title. Nobody really cares if it's Top Rank promoting it or PBC promoting it, although some guys on YouTube, that matters a lot. But outside of that bubble, nobody cares. The fans don't care. They care, is Floyd Mayweather fighting? Is Anthony Joshua fighting? Okay, is Canelo Alvarez fighting? They don't give a shit if it's on HBO when they were doing fights, Sky Sports, BT Sport, DAZN, ESPN. No one gives a shit. They care about the fighter. And over in UFC, that's very, very different. So a big part of your marketing in boxing is your overall packaging, your personality, the way you promote yourself on social media. Not only winning, but how you win, how you fight, your style, being exciting, right? And if you don't have an exciting style, you better have a pretty damn good personality that transcends. And Claressa, I think, realized right away that her style isn't very exciting. She doesn't knock girls out. Has she even had a knockdown yet in all the fights? And she's fighting in an extremely weak talent pool. She's fighting girls that really no one would look at and say, yeah, that's a professional athlete. She's fighting club level fighters, okay? That for titles. I think 2/3 of the titles she has fought for were created for her. They never existed before she fought for them. They were created for her by the sanctioning organization. So people can see this. People are not stupid. Even a casual fan can look and be like, wow, the girl she's fighting, if this is supposed to be the second best female boxer in this division in the world, wow, that's a weak talent pool. People can tell. And then on top of that, she's not dropping the girl multiple times. She's not beating her up and stopping her. This is a similar situation to what Ronda Rousey was going through in the UFC when Dana White basically created a division for her. The difference is Ronda was dominating the opposition and stopping them, scoring stoppages. She'd get it to the ground. She'd submit them. She was even snapping arms out the socket and doing that kind of shit. It was exciting for the casual fans, the dudes wearing the golf shirts and the khaki shorts that watch that shit. Because that's who was going to the bars after, leaving their banker job and watching that shit on TV. That's who they marketed to, and it worked because it was exciting. Claressa isn't doing that in boxing, and she's fighting weak opposition. You would think fighting that level of opposition, right? Because there's a couple of male prospects in boxing right now that Top Rank has been pushing, right? There's a couple I can name who have fought nothing but scrubs, and they're scoring first-round knockout after first-round knockout, and you know that they're fighting scrubs. You know that they're fighting guys that you're just pulling off the street, but at least the dude's getting rid of them in one round, right? He's doing what he's supposed to do. That wasn't happening with Claressa. So the personality and the lack of power and exciting style really, really hurt her marketing in the sport. The incidents with her family and how she handled it on social media, some of the abrasive political talk when it comes to race and gender, and the excuses made and things like that, and kind of almost the delusion, painting quote all over your back, right? And going out and calling yourself the greatest woman of all time when you haven't fought one elite level fighter that's anywhere near a pound for pound list. That kind of stuff rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and they tuned out. It's as simple as that. It's really not this huge, complicated thing. It's pretty simple, really. And if I bring that up, that's not me being a hater. That's just me telling the truth about how we got here. That's it. That's me as an analyst, a pundit, whatever the hell you want to call me, explaining to people who maybe don't know the whole track record of how we got to where we are right now. I was the first in media. And if I'm wrong about this, prove me wrong, okay? But you won't be able to. I was the first in boxing media to put actual data and numbers to this. The 3 divisions Claressa has fought in boxing combined have about 100 licensed professional fighters worldwide. So I'm talking 154, 160, 168. Look it up. I did videos on this. I talked about it on my podcast, and I showed the numbers and I broke it down for all you. Then suddenly every other podcast started talking about this. Boy, I've seen that happen quite a few times in recent years, and I never get credit for that shit. Never. But now it's safe to talk about this, right? After I do it and get beat up for it, then everyone else follows in, doesn't get beat up for it, doesn't take half the criticism I do, never gives me credit. Oh well. Y'all are real ones. But the 3 divisions combined, about 100 licensed professional female fighters in those divisions right now, globally, dude. So she's the best out of 100. Now that's good. And again, I don't blame her. It's not her fault. She's only fighting who's available to fight. But when you look at the male versions of those divisions, you're talking about thousands of licensed professional male boxers in those 3 divisions. If you look at the amateurs, you're talking tens of thousands of highly rated amateurs and professionals around the world. So if you're the best fighter between 54 and 68, let's call it Canelo Alvarez right now, you're a pretty damn special fighter if you're doing that in men's boxing. And Claressa goes out publicly and says she should be getting paid what guys like Canelo are getting paid, or top champions in boxing, because she has quote unquote done more than them. That's what I mean by delusional, because she hasn't. If she marketed herself a different way, and Savannah Marshall is the one opponent that might be interesting, the one super fight that might exist for her in boxing. if she spent some time building up Savannah Marshall and building up a possible promotion there, building up that super fight, branding it, instead of shitting on that girl and even using race to shit on her and shitting on Katie Taylor, who's a freaking lightweight, and saying, oh, Katie Taylor ain't shit until she fights me. Savannah Marshall ain't shit. And then she uses racial rhetoric infused in all that. Guys, this isn't hard to figure out. This isn't like some really, really tough trigonometry question or something. This is pretty simple. This is just simple addition and subtraction. Everything I just told you is true. None of it is false. None of it is me hating or being overtly negative or being sexist or racist or whatever ist word you want to add to it. It's just me, again, explaining how we got here. So I'll come full circle with this. That is why Claressa Shields is in MMA right now. It's also why she's in a small promotion in MMA and not in UFC, okay? Because they're being smart about this. They're not just going to dive in. I should state, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, leaves the amateurs. You would think Top Rank, PBC, Matchroom would be all over that, right? They weren't. So the word was out, okay? People in the boxing community talk. There's what's said publicly, and then there's what's said behind the scenes. You guys don't hear the behind the scenes talk. Every now and then, a little bit of that leaks out, and I could tell you a little bit about it. There's people out there that could tell you a little bit about it, but for the most part, that stuff stays behind the scenes. And I mean, even Floyd, was cautious, and they're both from Michigan. They're both from the same area. She ends up signing with a small club level promoter. No disrespect to them, but that's the level of promotion that they're at. And therefore, that's the level of promotion she's been involved in boxing. She hasn't been involved in big super fights. She hasn't fought in the big venues. Despite all that, she's headlined cards on premium cable. She's been fighting on American television essentially since she went pro. There are thousands, not hundreds, thousands of professional male fighters and female fighters that are signed to equivalent level promotions who are fighting way down on undercards, never see TV, never see any sort of TV, or their fights are never broadcast, especially not just nationally, but internationally. Claressa's were. And again, 2-time Olympic gold medalist. She should have been on TV. But I'm just saying, there's this notion from her and a few members of the media that want to stay in the good graces of their corporate masters that Claressa's been treated unfairly, and that some of the criticism is based in some sort of bias or prejudice. Now, let me be clear about this. There are people on Twitter that are just pieces of shit, that are just negative, mean pieces of shit. Okay, I'm not talking about those people. Those people suck. I'm talking about legitimate, objective, logical critics on Twitter, YouTube, whatever it is. Those dudes ain't being unfair. They're treating Claressa the same way they would treat me. Do you see how much male boxers get beat up? They get beat up constantly. And for some of you guys in the media to be like, oh, Claressa's daring to be great. She's the only boxer willing to do this. Oh my gosh, she's the GOAT. Meanwhile, the same fucking night, Amanda Serrano fought in MMA. None of you even mentioned that. Also, have you ever heard of this woman named Holly Holm? Have you ever heard that name before? Maybe you should look her up. Okay, I don't even follow MMA like that, but when Holly went over to MMA, she went over to UFC. And it took a few years, but ultimately she fought the baddest chick on the planet at the time. Not just the baddest female star in MMA, but the biggest star in UFC history, male or female, and beat the living shit out of her and stopped her. Okay, exciting, decisive, ended her career, burst the bubble, just completely blew up the UFC, right? That was daring to be great. And I'm not trying to compare Holly Holm to Claressa Shields, and I'm not going to play that whole damn game. I'm just telling you, the only reason I bring that up, the only reason I bring Amanda Serrano up is because other fighters have done this before. But there's one distinction. Male boxers haven't done it. I understand James Toney did, Ray Mercer did. That's because they were shot to shit and could not get sanctioned in boxing anymore. it's not hard to get sanctioned for a professional boxing match in certain jurisdictions, particularly if you're a former champion. We've seen all kinds of crazy shit. Look at what's going on. Lamar Odom is about to fight some dude I've never heard of. I think he's a singer or something. But like that fight shouldn't even be sanctioned, right? And it's being sanctioned. So like it's not that hard. And these guys, James Toney, Ray Mercer, they couldn't get sanctioned in a professional boxing match because of the brain damage and their health concerns and everything like that. They had to go over to MMA to make a little bit of money. That's why they did it. But Claressa Shields is doing it in her prime. Serrano in her prime. Holm in her prime. You see women doing it. Why? It goes full circle back to what I said earlier in this video. The talent pool in women's boxing just isn't there yet, right? And the money isn't there yet. You can go over across the street to MMA as a female boxer, and you can make more money over in MMA than you can here. There are only a handful of exceptions. Cecilia Brækhus, Katie Taylor, right? They're going to make more money at boxing because they're brands, not American. So there's a theme here. There have been American female boxing brands. Hello, Layla Ali, anybody? She still has national endorsements, right? Still, years after retiring, she still has tons of national endorsements. She's a star. Her last name does help. So it can be done as a woman, American female boxer. It can be done. But Layla Ali doesn't hurt that she's a good-looking woman, great personality, great on the mic, great on camera, knows how to market herself. All those things helped that package I talked about marketing her. And then, yeah, her father, that's a pretty big help. So all that plays into this, okay? Man, there's one other point I wanted to hit on. I'm gonna remember this as soon as I click off of this video. Damn it, I hate when that happens. Maybe coffee will help. I don't think so. I'm gonna forget my last point. Damn it. Well, okay. I hope I didn't trigger too many of you with this video. Look, Claressa fought last night in MMA. She won. Good for her. I wish her well over there. She really does have an opportunity. Maybe over the next few years, she builds herself up and she does fight Nunes, if that fight can even happen, because I know Nunes is getting a little older. That would be a super fight over there. And that would be her doing the equivalent of what Holly Holm did with Ronda Rousey. That would be truly daring to be great. And if she somehow won that fight, holy shit, then that GOAT talk, maybe there's something to it. Okay, but until that point, this is what it is. This is somebody who wasn't getting a lot of money in boxing. Some of it not her fault, but a lot of it was her fault, going over to MMA where she sees more opportunities. And I think she might be like the Serrano sisters, like Amanda Serrano, going back and forth between MMA and boxing, right? I think you'll see that over the next few years, and that's cool. Good for her. I wish her nothing but the best. But let's be real and talk about this. Let's talk about all sides of it, both sides of the coin, right? This isn't some one-dimensional thing here where we're just looking at one piece of it. Let's talk about all of it, because that's what we would do with any other boxer, right? So why treat this person different? That is not cool. And there's too much of that in media right now. So, all right, guys, I had one more point. I just can't freaking remember it. But let me know what you think. All right. And Monday, 5:00 p.m. Eastern on the Ring Digital YouTube channel, we will be back with episode number 270 of the Neutral Corner podcast. All right, guys, peace. Have a good week.